What's up, everybody? So tonight we had some technical difficulties with Hack the Box. We were having some issues getting, pings coming back, getting connection to the boxes. When we did get connection to the boxes, we had just disconnects happening. We eventually had to change VPN connections a couple of times. So what you're going to see is a couple of hard cuts in videos. I did my best tonight to edit the video down to where it made the most logical sense, as well as took out all of the technical difficulties that we encountered. So if you were a part of the live stream and you watched it live, thanks for sticking with me. You guys are awesome. If you're catching it on the recording, hopefully I did a good enough job to patch things up and you don't really notice the difficulties. But if you do see some hard cuts, just understand that we were having a lot of issues getting connection to Hack the Box. So without further ado, here is episode 10, part 3 of Active Directory exploitation. All right, it is 8:02. I am done stalling, you guys. Don't have a lot of PowerPoint. Got a whole 3 slides for you. Press my handy dandy new button. Boom. All right. So, week 10. We are in the penultimate week. Next week is the last week. So we've got some quick housekeeping tonight, AD exploitation part 3, and Q&A AMA. So I will talk about the AD exploitation real quick because I didn't really put it into what we're doing on the housekeeping. We are going to be covering tonight MS17-010, very, very popular exploit. We're going to be talking about Kerberoasting, and we're also going to be talking about GPP and cPasswords. So, I'll also cover a little bit of Metasploit. We'll reinforce a lot of concepts that you've seen the last couple weeks, and you're going to just see more of the mindset of what I would do in a real internal penetration test. So, some housekeeping. You saw behind me. Let me change the screen here. I have hue lights in the background. We're doing a test run this week, subs only if you are a subscriber. There are some special commands for you behind me that will allow you to change the color of my background. Now, there's a 2-minute timer on it, but there's red, blue, green, purple, pink. Baby is baby blue. And you can see the police is going off in the background for the subscriber. But you can also do the police and the RGB as well. So thanks Deadly for the sub. I appreciate that. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you guys want to play with the colors while I'm talking, you're more than welcome to play with the colors. Other than that, let me take this off. So there is no stream next Wednesday, May 29th. I will not be here. Again, I will not be here. So the last stream is May 28th. We're going to be covering file transfers, maintaining access, pivoting, and cleanup. And then the second half of the night, we're going to be talking about the boring stuff, which is legal documents you're going to need to know about, and reporting. We'll cover what a pen test report looks like and what are some good resources for building a pen test report. So the important stuff to know. Other than that, tonight's lesson is going to take probably an hour. We don't have a lot on our plates. So just sit back and relax and enjoy this final AD lesson, and then we'll take it easy tonight. And then next week, if you guys want to come up for something next week, I don't know what I'm thinking yet, but maybe we could do some kind of drinking game or something fun that we can talk about it in the Discord. But if you come up with something fun, I'll play along with you guys. Since it's the last week, we'll do something fun. Other than that, let's go ahead and just dive right in. So I am on Hack the Box right here. I'm on the tab. If you go over to the left side, I clicked on retired. And now you can see that last week I asked you to vote for blue, which you did, thank you. And I asked you to vote for active, which you did, thank you. I've gone ahead and just recently reset both machines on my network. If you're on VIP, you're going to be able to follow along. If you're not, you're just going to have to watch. So with VIP, there are different segments of the VPN. So hopefully my resetting of the box is on a different segment of yours. But you can see I reset active 12 minutes ago and blue was reset 17 minutes ago. So for time-saving purposes, what we're going to do is we're going to scan both of these, and then we're going to work on blue first and then work on active second. So let's go ahead and just get our scans kicked off. I'm going to open up 2 new tabs here and get these blown up. And then we are just going to nmap these suckers. And blue sits at 10.10.10.40. And active is at 100. IP is down, nice. So I've been having issues with active today being consistently up or down, and it looks like blue is down as well. So we may have to give it a second. May have to toggle connection. Hopefully you're having a little bit better luck than I'm having. Let me toggle my connection here. All right. So if you recall last time, we said, I gave you this link. I've been giving this link throughout the course, right? And it's been the top 5 ways I got domain admin on your internal network before lunch. We've talked about LLM and R poisoning and NetBIOS poisoning. We talked about relay attacks. We keep scrolling. Okay, MS17-010. That's what we're going to be talking about next. This is what blue is about. If you see, it deals with EternalBlue, Eternal Champion, Eternal Romance, etc. This was the Shadow Brokers exploit that was stolen from the NSA, I believe, and turned into things like the WannaCry exploit, the ransomware. Basically, it's just a very, very, nasty exploit that transverses your system. And this is one of those things that sit out there unpatched on a lot of networks, mostly internal, right? If you see this on the external and it hasn't been exploited yet, very unlikely, but internal networks leave this all the time. Think about a machine that's running some sort of legacy software that can't be updated off of, a certain Windows version. People are just lazy on their patching. For whatever the reason, this is still sitting out there in a lot of networks. So let's see where we're at, 99.99. So we're going to review the scan and see not only what we're going to be exploiting, but we'll talk about what we would see just from a pen tester point of view, what is interesting to us with this scan. If you want to pull up, I've also got the security bulletin here for MS17-010. If you scroll through it, it talks about that it's an SMB exploit. It talks about all the operating systems that are vulnerable. It's pretty much most of them. The initial exploits that came through were for like Windows 7 and Windows 2012. There's certain service packs that are exploitable, like Service Pack 1. And you start, looking through these and you see, oh, Windows 7 Service Pack 1. That is, that's interesting. Maybe I should see if EternalBlue or MS17-010 is on that, right? And you same thing with like Windows 8 or Windows 2012. I think it's R2. You look through these and you say, yeah, see R2 on here, and you just want to know, what you can exploit. So I'll show you how to confirm before we actually run an exploit that it might be vulnerable and what steps we're going to need to take as well. And this thing really likes to sit at 99. Let's see where we're at over here as well, 17%. Somebody asks, how does it get infected if it's not exposed internally? So the big way that the ransomware gets in is typically through phishing. So if we're talking like WannaCry, I've experienced WannaCry firsthand as a help desk person. That was fun. So, I mean, you basically anybody who opens a malicious file, that file is going to download on the computer, and then it's going to start searching through the network, right? It's going to look for SMB open. If SMB is open, it's going to try to navigate to other computers through the network and exploit as many as it can. It'll start encrypting the files, and that's how you get ransomware. So it can self-navigate through a network, and that's, in terms of infection, that's one way of doing it. If we're talking an internal penetration test, as long as you're on the network, regardless of how we got on. So we've been assuming internal network access for 3 weeks now. So regardless of how you're in the network, these are one of the easiest machines to drop. Let's see what it came back with. This really didn't do a good job. Your scan is likely going to look way different than my scan is. Typically, when I've scanned this before and run this before, it gives us quite a bit of information on what's behind not only port 139 and port 45, but it'll say what service type we're running. It'll say, it even tells us, I think the name, like Harris PC. You would see more than that. For some reason, it's picking up that like there's a Fortinet firewall. I don't know what's going on with the Hack the Box tonight, but this is probably not going to happen to you. I'm just getting unlucky. So typically we have some script results down here that'll tell us a little bit more also of the information that it picks up. It should be picking up some sort of Windows information in terms of OS. The SMB is going to tell that out. So really that's what we're going to look at. There's another thing on here too where SMB was unsigned. If you see that, that's obviously a finding because we can do relay attacks like we talked about last week. Unfortunately, it's not working out for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that we saw the scan and the scan came back with some information. And we have deduced that there may be a potential exploit here. So one of the things you should do, and if you're running Nessus is going to do this for you, but you should always do this anyway, just as a backup check, is if you see SMB open on a network, you should be checking to see if it is exploitable or at least potentially vulnerable to MS17-010. This is, like I said, one of the most common and easiest attacks in order to get system. Okay, so here is the script we ran, nmap-pn, port 445. Here's the script. And then it spits out, hey, looks like it's vulnerable to this remote code execution, right? And if we were to rescan, we'd probably see more of the nmap this time around. And did we get it back hey, we actually got back our scan for active as well. Cool. So we've got this scan here saying it's vulnerable. So at this point, if we're a pen tester, we've got a couple options depending on what the client has told us, right? If the client says, hey, you have free reign, go ahead, do whatever you want. Or if the client says, hey, you know what, before you run any crazy exploits, please let me know, because an exploit like this may actually take down a system. It may mess things up depending on what the system's doing. If the system's some sort of critical infrastructure where it can't go down, you might not want to run that exploit, right? So it's important to know on these RCE exploits that you're probably better off being safe than sorry, and you don't want to take something down that's critical and have a client pissed off at you. So you call the client up, the client says, okay, fire away, and that's kind of where we're at here with this exploit. So if we come in and we say, let's go back into Metasploit, and I'm thinking, guys, this stream is not going to make it to the live cut. So what we're going to do, I'm probably just going to piece together a couple of my old streams that I have on these topics and throw them in as a you should have been there for the live shit show. And we'll just call this a special night. So we've got MSF5. All right, let's say search MS17-010. And we are looking for exploit Windows SMB MS17-010 EternalBlue right here. So you can just copy this bad boy and paste it. We're going to set the R host to 10.10.10.40. And then we are going to run this. Now, a couple things to note. First thing to note is this might not work on the first try or the second try. It might take a few tries to actually work. This is very, very tricky exploit to get running. Of course, it runs on the first time, gets us win. Next thing to note, it puts us right into a command shell. So if you are a Meterpreter fanboy like I am, this is not the best situation. We can improve upon this, right? So this is just a generic payload. We can say, who am I? And it puts us in as authority system, which is great. But let's Control C out of this and just say yes. And let's say options again. This time we can see the payload option. It says generic shell reverse TCP. And we're just going to say, how about we say show payloads and see what's available to us. We've got 43 payloads, but I'm going to use a Windows 64-bit Meterpreter. So let's just say set payload Windows 64 Meterpreter, and then let's just double tab to see our options. Reverse TCP is probably the best bet here. Always good to double check our options as well. Once we set the payload, we want to make sure that our L host is still holding true. Our L port is also still holding true. Sometimes it resets these down to nothing, or if you've got an exploit running, which is sometimes the case already on a port, it might default to this 4444, and you might want to set it to something else. All right, so now let's go ahead and run this again. Let's see if we get lucky twice in a row on the first fire. And sometimes we can crash the machine, especially if there's a bunch of us on the same network doing this. Fingers crossed that we don't do that. And we may fail our first one here. So we failed the first one, that's okay. It's going to try again with different groom allocations and see if it works. Is there still an AMA? There is still an AMA. All right, we got a session. So this is a 2-point concept, proved both of my points. Don't worry if it fails. You might even get it failing 3 times through. You might need to rerun it again. So rerun it a couple times to make sure that it's a false positive and is failing. And also, second point here is we can always improve our shell code on these 64-bit machines. So now we've got a Meterpreter shell. If we say sysinfo on this. All right, we've got the 64-bit Meterpreter. We've got the 64-bit architecture. Perfect. And now we can also look around. One of my favorite things to do is to say hash dump. Okay, we just dumped the hashes for the administrator and the Harris account. So like we talked about last week, I would take these hashes and try to pass them around, right? We can use crackmap exec. We can try with ps exec in the network to see if we can get in anywhere. So definitely critical. One of the, first experiences I had on a pen test with EternalBlue was getting a hash dump like this and then passing the administrator hash and getting access to pretty much every machine because they were cloning machines. So it's always worth trying crack map exec and passing the hashes around like we did last week to see where you have access to. Of course, we can shell into this and we can look around the file system. You know, we could say, we could cd to whoever users and then say dir and see who's in here. Okay, administrator's in here. Who does administrator, what do they have on their folders, right? We could say dir. Okay, maybe go to the documents. You know, you'll come up with ways to search for sensitive files and have keywords and stuff like that, but these are the things you're looking for, like, what can I find on this system? What kind of access do I have? You want to see, you know, who it's talking to, what the ARP table looks like. Of course, there's not going to be another one in this network that it's chained to, but you want to see that through the ARP. You want to say route print and see what the routing table looks like. Netstat's another good one to look at. So if we go netstat-ANO, we can look at all the connections that are coming in and going out, right? So we talked about it a little bit last week about dual homed machines. For example, if this PC for some reason had two NICs and one NIC was sitting on a 10.10.10 network and the other one was sitting on 10.10.11, for example, we might be able to see that the 10.10.11 is talking to a whole different network that we had no access to. And we're going to talk about that in more depth next week when we talk about pivoting. So that's a pivoting situation where we want to go into a different network. How will we investigate these higher ports? So these higher ports, if you look at what we're doing, like the 4444 here, those are established from us connecting. So we opened a port on their end. These other ones, who's to say what they are? We'd have to see. You see a lot of high ports like this going out of like 443 and other, you know, like internet addresses. These could be other people's shells for all we know. They may have just put in like other, you know, it's hard to say without being able to go into the machine. So we want to look at those things. Of course, Control C. We can load some extra modules as well. We can load incognito, which is my favorite. And we just say list tokens -u for user. Okay. And if we're on a domain network, we may catch a domain administrator who had logged into this account. Remember, we talked about the tokens and how they worked last week. Obviously, there's no domain account here to log into because we're not doing that. But something to look for. If we're using 64-bit architecture, we can load Kiwi. Kiwi's awesome. One of the best commands is creds all. Again, we talked about this last week. No creds here, but if we type in help, there's more than just the creds all. We can talk creds Kerberos. Golden ticket attacks come through this. We could do Wi-Fi lists if there was a Wi-Fi profiles. So there's a lot of things that we can get just off of Kiwi. So these are some things to look for, things we've talked about. It should all be coming together, right? This is just a very, very simple exploit. But the post exploitation is really the most important. Like we own this machine in 2 seconds, and there's a reason it's on the top 5 lists. Like I said, it's on most major networks. Since we owned it so fast, we need to be able to make sure we enumerate around everywhere, right? We're looking for sensitive files, those hashes. Where can those hashes lead us? Can we impersonate a domain admin? What kind of net commands can we get access to, etc.? So every little computer has a piece to play in the final picture. It's just seeing how that piece fits into the puzzle. What's the difference between Mimikatz and Kiwi? Kiwi is a 32-bit, right? So if we say load, or sorry, Mimikatz is 32-bit. If you say load Mimikatz, it's going to say, hey, you're loading on to newer architecture, right? OS. So we want to actually use it on some older architecture. Kiwi is the newer and better Mimikatz. All right, so we're gonna call this one a day. This one was just gonna be a 20-minute box that's turned into 45 minutes. Again, I'm very sorry, guys. Even I struggle, you know. So let's go ahead and kill this one. And let's go ahead and talk about the results from this machine here called Active. Now, Active is one of the favorite boxes I've encountered in the Hack the Box labs because it is realistic. It's very realistic. So if we look at it, there are some signs that what we are up against is likely a domain controller. You can see that it's running DNS. It's got Kerberos, which is an authentication system. We've got 139 open. We've got LDAP open for Active Directory, right? That should be a pretty big sign that we're running a domain. And the domain here is active.htb. We can go through all the ports here. It's very, very similar to that, like I said, of a domain controller. So when we see this, we look down here, SMB, and common to domain controllers, SMB signing is enabled and required. Most of the SMB relay or the NTLM relay is done other than domain controllers. Sometimes you're lucky and it's turned off, but Microsoft got smart and enabled that for Windows Server. I don't even know what versions onward, but it's as of late been running this just fine. So this looks like 2008, so God knows how long it's been doing that. And other things that we could look at, right? If we can maybe dump LDAP information, that's a little bit more advanced and outside of the scope. I've seen that done in some Hack the Box without credentials, but typically you're not going to have access to that without credentials. But that's something to think about and to study. Like if you get this box back on an assessment and say, for example, it's the only box, you're going to want to look through each single one of these ports and say, what's interesting to me, right? The first thing that's always interesting in my behalf is always 445 and 139, because the more time you spend in pen testing, the more time you have to realize that SMB is behind a ton of exploits. So do note that it looks like they may have some sort of HTTP API going on. I would investigate everything that says it's open and probably not TCP wrapped. So definitely worth looking into. So here, first thing we're going to look into is going to be 445. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go in and use a tool called smbclient. So it's going to look something like this. We're just going to say smbclient. We're going to do -L. I think it stands for list. Don't ask me what it stands for. I don't really know. And we're going to list out the contents of the directory. It's going to ask for a password. We're going to try hitting enter. And it says anonymous login successful. This is a finding. So this finding is that we shouldn't have anonymous login, right? You shouldn't know what sort of SMB shares are out there. So we've got these shares here. We're able to see those. We would absolutely list this on a report. Now, what we can do with these shares depends on how critical, you know, this finding becomes. Right now, it's just a low finding. Close up the anonymous login. So from here, we'd want to see what folders we can actually connect to. Now, the juiciest folders might be something like the C share or the remote admin. We can see if we can connect to those folders. So to connect to a folder, we just say smbclient. We do the character escaping just like I'm doing here, and we'll just say something like admin $. And try to connect, hit enter, and then it says access denied, even though we have anonymous login successful. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit and tell you that the one that works here is the replication folder. We hit enter, enter again, we are successful. Okay, so we have an SMB login here. We are in this replication folder. Now, if we type help, we could see a full list of commands of what we can do. It's very, very similar to Linux. We can say ls and see what's in here. Okay, it looks like there's a folder called active.htb. We could say cd active.htb, ls again. okay, policies, scripts, DFSR private. And it's called replication, so it looks like it's probably a backup of something, right? And a backup of what? Who knows? But we can figure that out for ourselves. Let's cd back a share. Instead of digging through all these files, there's an easier way to do this. So let's just say we want to download all the files and folders that are here. Well, we're going to want to do that with something called mget. But before we just do an mget, we're going to say recurse on, because we want to download all the folders recursively. And to save some time, we're just going to turn off prompts. So we're just going to say prompt off. And now all we have to say is mget with an asterisk like this. And it's going to start downloading stuff. Okay, and we only grabbed like 8 files here. If we look through the files that we're grabbing, looks like we grabbed gpt.ini, gpe.ini, a .inf file. And then I see this groups.xml. This is something that is really well known to me. And this is something that is likely going to be pay dirt for us. So let's explore what's in the groups.xml, and then we'll talk about why it's so relevant. So I'm just going to say bye. Okay, I guess there's no bye here. Just Control C. If we ls in this folder, or we say cd, I think it should just be active. It should have the same folder structure. So we say active, policies. Actually, this would probably be better to just do in a GUI form, documents, downloads, active. And we say it was policies 3.1b machine preferences groups. And then we open up this groups.xml. Okay. So it might be a little hard to see. So let's talk about what this GPP is, this groups.xml is. So groups.xml is related to something called GPP. It's also group policy preferences is what it stands for. An easy way to remember this on a pen test, if you ever listen to rap, there's a song called Are You Down with OPP? Well, just think to yourself, are you down with GPP? And make sure that you search for GPP, right? So you've got this group policy preferences. And what it did was it allowed domain admins to create domain policies using embedded credentials, right? So the credentials are right here in this file. You see username, active.htb, and then we've got services TGS here, this ticket granting service. And we'll talk about what the ticket granting service is here in a second. And then you see this thing called the cPassword. This is what we're after. And there's actually a great article by Rapid7 that I've got up here. It's called Pentesting in the Real World, Group Policy Pwnage. It talks a little bit about GPP and what it does, probably better than words I can put it into. But basically, you were able to store the username and password, and you created it, right, for an account to do some sort of action, you can say file sharing or whatever it is through group policy. This was up until a few years ago. So these keys just stored in this sysvol folder, right? And what you can do is there is actually a Metasploit module, which I want to show you. We won't use it tonight because we have no need. We've already got the file. But I run this on every single internal assessment, and you would not believe how many times the cPassword or the GPP, it just shows right up. So if you search GPP, does the groups.xml file exist on an active domain? It exists on some active domains. This is for older domains, but sometimes even when they migrate, they leave that file in there. And we're going to talk about that too. So if you see the post Windows gather credentials, So as long as we have some sort of access on a session, we could say use post Windows gather credentials GPP. Look at the options. So we need a session, right? It could be a PS exec, whatever session we get. Once we have a session, we can run this. We may be able to get the a domain administrator password just from this. So very, very important to try to run this on any internal assessment that you can. So another thing to note, though, we have set this up in the past for clients as what's called a canary account. Basically, what we're doing is we put in an account that has a GPP or cPassword, and it's never been used, but it is sitting there as a honeypot, right? So when an attacker's in your network and they're looking for this low-hanging fruit, because GPP is low-hanging fruit, we say, okay, they find the file, they see the username credentials, and as soon as those username credentials get activated, then we know an attacker's on the network, right? So just because this is low-hanging fruit, your competition might be using it as bait. So always think about that as well, but typically on pen tests, it's something that we'd grab right away. Okay, so let's talk about how we can exploit what we just found. So let's open up this file. We've got the cPassword here. I want you guys, if you're following along, to copy the cPassword. And what we're gonna do is say GPP decrypt. It's built into Kali. And then we should just be able to paste this password here. We get a warning, but don't worry about it. The cipher's deprecated. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna copy this. And we are going to, let's just paste it somewhere that we can have it, right? Okay, so what this means now is we have a account. We've got this domain here, active.htb. We've got this service, ticket granting service account here. So what can we do with this? Well, we can use, again, crack map exec, try to push it around, right? See what we can do with it. We can try to go back into the smbclient, try to log in with this account, see if we can get into that admin folder. You know, I could use ps exec on this machine. That was the first thing I tried when I did active, was to say, okay, does this have access to the share folder and administrative privilege? So I tried ps exec. ps exec doesn't work either, but be thinking about the same process for everything you're doing. So ps exec, you know, crack map exec, etc. Whatever we can do with these credentials, we're going to try to get in anywhere and everywhere that we can. Well, we're in a one box network right now. So another tactic that we're going to talk about, and tactic number 4 on this list, is Kerberoasting. So we are going to talk Kerberoasting. Let me minimize everything and bring out my handy dandy pen so I can explain this as best as I can. There's probably going to be somebody out there who is a domain guru and going to correct me on this, because people like to correct me all the time when I say something wrong. So sorry in advance if I misquote this, right? So let's talk about my best interpretation of what Kerberoasting is. And before we can do that, let's talk about Kerberos. So Kerberos is just an authentication protocol, right? It uses tickets. So it's using tickets as a form of communication and authentication. So let's assume a situation, and this is how it typically is. That is a huge fucking thing. All right, let's clear that. Let's try that again. All right. We've got this machine here. This is our server. Our server is also considered a KDC, right? It's a key distribution center because we're giving out keys. All right. We also have another computer here. We'll just call that the client, right? So we've got the client and the server. Well, let's say the server or the client wants to authenticate, right? So it's going to come to the server and it's going to say, hey, server, you got those tickets? Can I get a ticket? It's going to ask for a TGT, a ticket granting ticket. Now, the server is going to check the credentials, and if the credentials are good, it's going to send back over encryption, which is called TGS, ticket granting service, is going to encrypt a secret key. Remember, key distribution center. It's going to send back a secret key that gets stored on the client. So this client has the ticket stored here until the ticket expires. Now let's add a pawn to this story. Let's say that there is a service that we want to connect to, right? Come down here. We'll just call this service. And a service can be whatever we want. It can be SQL, it can be antivirus, you name it. But let's just call this a SQL service. Okay, services have what we call SPNs. These are service principal names. So to connect as a client, we need to ask for permission to connect to the service. We need to know, we say, hey, the SPN, I've got my ticket. I'm going to take this, and can I please connect to this SQL service? And we get a session key back from the server if we have the credentials, right? Or the ticket, at least, to connect. So the thing to know about Kerberoasting is that with any valid ticket or TGT, we can request for a TGS ticket for this SPN. So lots of acronyms, right? If you're military, former military, you're probably following along just fine. But there is a lot of little letters here. Just know that if we have a valid ticket, we can request via the SPN here, at least to attempt to get a TGS, right? So we're going to see what that looks like. There's actually a tool that does that for us. How did I do, you domain people? Did I do okay? All right, let's pull this back up. And this is part of the impacket. The impacket, right? The whole thing we've been using this entire time. What we installed in the beginning, I told you would be important. This toolkit. So, impacket is awesome. So let's go ahead and locate what we're going to be running. It's called get, if I could type, GetUsersSPNs. You see we have a few. The one we installed in the beginning of the course was the opt impacket. I'm going to use that one. So I'm going to cd to opt impacket examples. All right. So now we ls, there's a bunch of stuff in here, but we're going to be using that GetUsersSPNs.py. We're just going to say Python GetUsersSPNs.py. All right. First things first, we need the account. The account was active.htb, and it was service, ticket granting service, right? Next, we need to say DCIP. We need to know the IP of the domain controller. Well, lucky for us, this is the domain controller. And last, we need to request the ticket. So we're going to request a ticket. We need a password. So we come back into here, we copy this guy, we paste, and we get this wonderful thing back here. So we see that we have captured something here for the administrator, right? We've got this long hash, and it's a KRB5TJS. So what can we do with this? Well, we could take this offline and try to crack it and see what happens. And we're going to do just that. So have your handy dandy hashcats ready. I'm going to load mine up now. Give me 1 second. As I am not prepared as you guys are. Okay. So, I'm gonna run hashcat. We're gonna say --help. We are looking for KRB5, which is 13100, if I am not mistaken. Here you go. It's under network protocols, 13100, Kerberos 5, TGS, sorry. Okay, so we know our module is 13100. If you've been following along week to week, you should know how to run hashcat now, right? So hashcat64.exe. We're going to do a module of 13100. I named this file Kerberos.txt, and all I did was copy this entire line all the way down to the end, put it into a file. I'm going to run this through RockU. I've got a brand new 2080 Ti that we're going to push this through. I haven't actually run any hash cracking on yet, so let's just hit enter and see what happens. And it took us not that long at all. So we went through, where is it? 77% of the list, and the list is 14 million passwords long, so that's pretty good. All right, so it's cracked. You can see that it's cracked. Ticketmaster 1968 is the credential. So we're going to take that, and I'm going to paste it in here. Okay. And now let's load up Metasploit. We actually have it loaded. And what we're going to do is we're just going to search for psexec. We're going to use exploit Windows SMB psexec. It's number 11 on my screen if you don't see it. Let's talk options. Okay, so we've got SMB domain. Remember, that is active.htb. SMB user is administrator. SMB pass is that Ticketmaster pass. It would be helpful if I hit the word set in front of that. Let's try running it, see if we get lucky. I'm kind of indifferent on the... I never said an rhost. Sorry, guys. All right, let's try again. See if we get lucky. Okay, so it selected Powershell. Let's look at our targets. So we ran automatic. Let's try a native upload instead. So we see that we authenticated, we uploaded a payload, it's creating, it's deleting, and it's hanging. Let's try target 3. Might have to go back to target 2 and pray. Oh, my lhost is not good. Good job on that one. So, as pointed out, thank you very much. The lhost got pointed to my machine and not the Kali machine, or the IP address that's here. So let's set the lhost. If yours did that, also set yours. I think mine's 36. Oh no, it's 21 now. All right. So set target back to 2 and run again. There we go. Thank you, Techno Bro. All right, so we've got a shell. Sysinfo on the shell, 64-bit interpreter, 64-bit architecture. Get the UID. We are authority system. We have full access on this PC. Again, same concept here, right? We would load incognito, list tokens, see what tokens are out there. We would do a hash dump, dump the hashes, pass them around, see what information we can get from that. This is one of the more realistic boxes, like I said, in terms of teaching you two common internal tactics. Kerberoasting is obviously one of the more common that's going to lead you somewhere, but a GPP cPassword is something you should be checking on pretty much every assessment, because that does lead to easy win. You would be surprised how many companies have their passwords stored, or even if they've migrated or updated somewhat, in an older password that is similar to what their current password is. So any password that you can get is absolutely relevant. So with that being said, and this stream being all kinds of screwed up, we still finished 11 minutes past schedule, so that's not terrible. I am going to change my screen over to IRL, and we can talk shop for as long as you guys want to. Probably hard stop at 10. But that is it for Active Directory. I don't think this video is going to be making it onto the YouTubes. So groups.xml was patched in 2014, I believe. So it depends if it's patched, but R2, 2012 R2, you wouldn't see it in 2016. But you see a lot of 2012, you see a lot of 2008. So GPP is still very common. Was I running Windows command prompt? No, I was running that off my computer. So I run my Hashcat. Sorry, I'm losing my mind. I run my Hashcat off of the graphics card. I cannot run it off the VM. Even with -- force, my CPU is too new, I guess. It is not even compatible. So yeah, I might cut it off or edit it. I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do with it. That was just a mess. Absolute mess. Do I still think that the OSCP is go-to in terms of HR-related certs? Studying the ECPPT, but was debating more eLearn certs. I think that the OSCP is the HR gatekeeper. I think that eLearn security is way more relevant. So if you want to spend the time and the money to get past HR, I think it's probably worth a $1,200 investment or whatever it costs. But you're going to learn way more in eLearn security. Your wife says I'm sympathetic. Don't know if I'd go that far, but I appreciate that. What type of credentials are good for entry-level pen testing jobs in the outside world? Planning for a military exit in a couple of years. I mean, it's not necessarily credentials, but if you can start working on certs now, that'll definitely help. Just the more knowledge, the better. You maybe even talk to Jeff. So Cyber Dude Jeff is exiting the military here in the next year or two, and he's been, just self-studying, following along to these sorts of things, working towards internships, etc. So, and if you're not a part of VetSec, check out VetSec at veteransec.com/Slack. There's a group of us, about 500, almost 600 now, that are all focused on cybersecurity and are ex or current military. So you may have come from there. I don't know, but worth looking into as well. Does Metasploit model, does it leave remnants or write to disk on targets? So you saw the Metasploit try to clean itself up when we just ran it. It does its best to leave remnants, or not leave remnants, I should say. But it's not always a guarantee, right? Let me switch back. So you see here, we're uploaded the payload, created it, and then it deletes the payload. Sometimes it doesn't delete this payload. Sometimes it tries and it fails. And there's always little bits and pieces of you left behind. If you say PS, like you're in here. We exploited something, right, to gain access. So you're tied into one of these system services. You have your parent PID that you're tied to somewhere, but there's always forensics and etc. that you leave behind in logs or whatnot. It does its best to clean up, but it doesn't perfectly clean up. If you're getting errors on the GetSPN part of mPacket, purge your mPacket. We talked about it in video 1. If you did do that, I have no idea what's going on. But purge the Kali mPacket, go download the mPacket, install it off of GitHub. It's literally pip install period or something like that once you download it. So it's pretty straightforward. OSCP or EJPT for bug bounty hunters? I would say neither for bug bounty hunting. You would be looking at like their WAPT course, Web Application Penetration Testing, or the WAPT X, the extreme version of that. I wouldn't say, unless you're doing bug bounty on hosts, then that'll be useful, like the EJPT or whatever to start out with, but you're better off just reading, bug bounty write-ups and studying web app, because that's mostly what bug bounties are. I don't know if there's a way to pass the Kerberos hash. There may be. Not that I've come across. Police. So Vita, we clean up as best as we can. We'll talk about cleaning up next week, what we can do to clean up. So you're 1 week ahead of me. Yes, it's better to start on externals than internals. Absolutely. Externals are like what you're going to see doing Hack the Box or OSCP or any of that stuff. It's all enumeration and then just trying out ways to exploit, thinking outside the box. Internal is more about technique and attack types. So you saw, if you're following along with this course, you saw we didn't spend that much time on externals. We spent on internal. External, I can only show you so many tools. The rest of it's going to be on you to do the research, right? So I can say, hey, look at this. You want to dig into this, and this. But it's up to you to do the Googling and researching and trying out the exploitation. But the internal, we've got so many things to look for, so many different techniques. it's easy, way easier to spend a lot more time on. Just play Hacknet and remove the logs. Yeah, guys. We're stuck in police mode right now, Matt. Advice if you're working at Fortune 500 and trying to get on the pen testing team. I'm going to be here another 3 years. If you're going to be doing internals first, then start studying internals. Learn as much as you can. There's some red team labs out there. We covered last week a bunch of resources for internal pen testing. So, I mean, just go look for that stuff and start studying, you know. Any experience with Rapid7? I haven't encountered a lot of Rapid7. We try to set it up for just doing like a dummy SOC assessment, but we ended up going a different direction because the company wasn't using Rapid7 anyway. And they got really annoying with their sales. I agree, purple is the best background color. Do I know how many guesses per second? I don't. We can see if we could figure that out. So, I mean, hold on. We did what here? It took 1 second to run through 11 million passwords. That's pretty good. If I'm reading that correctly. 1 second. 8525 KHS a second. Hey, it was a business expense. I had to buy it, guys. I had to buy it. Honestly, though, I was telling you guys last week, I had a 1080 Ti that I bought used, and every time I powered on a game or anything, it would just shake. The whole system would shake. So I RMA'd it because it's still under warranty, but the RMA policy for MSI is 20 to 35 business days, and they don't pay for shipping. So I spent $20, had to do my own box, everything, ship it out, and then I'm not going to see it for probably 2 more months. So I wasn't going to run on a 970. I just decided a 2080 is going to be good for a business expense. Need it for a hash cracking rig or something, right? I kept the receipt, let's say that. If I had to use the FireEye Commando VM in engagement yet, I haven't. I have switched to using Burp Suite on Windows as opposed to using in my Kali box. I would not be opposed to trying the Commando Suite. I actually wanted to do a video or a live stream on the Commando Suite and just see if it's cool or not. So maybe that's something we can do here after Zero to Hero, play around with it. Because I have not had the chance to touch it yet. Is there a bug bounty for AD or internal? I haven't seen one, so I have seen some. I've seen some programs that, like Synac, will allow you to do pen tests on like a contract base. This is just for, at least as far as you know, the U.S. I don't know if they do it outside the U.S., But you can, for certain projects, they'll say, hey, we need somebody in this location or to fly to this location and do a pen test. So that's more of an hourly rate, but they are a bug bounty company. So I haven't seen many internals. Typically, I see external, I see mostly web app, but there's mobile. So it just depends. Can I talk about becoming an entrepreneur? Oh, wait, I missed one. Sorry. Thanks, Vita. I appreciate that. Do I ever use PowerShell and assessments? I do not. I'm trying to get better at that because everybody says it's the way to go. So I've got the red team, not the red team lab, the Active Directory labs that has some PowerShell commands in it. I'm running through that and I'm running through PTX. I've got to finish my web app course though before I can get into that. So for most assessments, you don't need it. When you start getting advanced into red team stuff, you're definitely going to need it because it's more about querying instead of like knocking on the front door, if that makes sense. You're going to make less noise. So things to think about. Night, Jeff. All right, can I talk about becoming an entrepreneur in cybersec? What do you want to know specifically, and I will talk about it. You tell me and we'll talk. Have I done any Bluetooth radio captures for Bluetooth keyboards? I have not. Are you talking like bluejacking? I haven't done any Bluetooth anything. I would actually like to learn that. I like wireless a lot. That'd be pretty cool. Maybe we can do a bluejacking video. I can learn how to do it and put it together. How would you go about starting your own consulting product company? Do your research. Obviously, if we're assuming that you already have the talent, the next step is to do the research on everything that you're going to need done. I could bring up my spreadsheet again. We can talk about it. So I don't actually know what some of these numbers I wrote down. I don't even know what they mean anymore. All right. So I'll tell you some of my examples, and this is repeat from last week. So people watched this last week. I'm sorry. All right. So you need to know, how many funds that you have saved up, right? And what your monthly expenses are going to be. Are you going to be doing this while working a job? Are you not? If this is assuming not working a job at all, right? So I have about 5 months until I go broke without earning any single penny. Before going broke, I do have a couple credit cards. One obviously is better than the other because it has lower interest by a lot. So I've got a $22,000 credit card that if I absolutely needed to cash out on or do whatever, I could use that and push this number up higher. You have to consider some things. Like I've got my salary that I get right on base, but there's a couple other things that I also get. There's a 401k match that I'll be losing money on. Health insurance. This is actually kind of cheap because I anticipated going on my wife's insurance. Typically health insurance is about $300 to $400 a month. So anywhere from $3,600 to $4,800 a year. Liability insurance, I've got at $720. I don't know if that's actually accurate. It might be a little more because you want this errors and emissions insurance to cover your ass in case you screw up. Probably at least $1 million is what I've been hearing. I haven't purchased this yet. I'm about to start 1099ing here shortly, so I'm going to need my own personal liability insurance, and then I'll need a company liability insurance. I'm going to be a cheapskate and not buy this until I have a client to actually work on. The other important thing to know is that Social Security, your company likely covers half of your Social Security costs. When that goes away, the first, $100 and something thousand is taxed at full rate, I believe. Whatever calculation I did here, I'm looking at somewhere around 10 grand extra that my company wasn't paying for. or was paying for, that I'll have to be paying for. On top of that, for a pen tester, you need a Nessus license, you need Burp Suite, a website annual cost, a email, and this is going to go up. This is per user. I'm going to need at least 2 users. Utilities, mileage, phone, I include that in my expenses for now. Eventually, this will have to get broken down into more costs. But they weren't really included in my salary estimate, so I'm not going to include those either. Web design is a sunk cost. I paid for somebody to do the website design. Business registration, legal, that's a sunk cost as well. It's a one-time thing. On top of that, so I've got my salary equivalent, business expenses, sunk costs is about 165. That is probably closer to 170 because I don't have hardware included yet. I don't have my hardware that I'm going to be doing. So laptops or servers that I'm going to have to buy. So this number is probably closer to 170, especially with the unknown errors and emissions, and you have to think about marketing costs that you have to do as well. So there's that. I think I just bought business cards I haven't put into accounting. What else do I have in accounting? I've got filing. I spent $136 on a logo that I haven't put in there. I have Adobe systems for my PDF, whatever, that I pay monthly. Business cards I did put in here. I spent $50. I figure I'll spend $50 a year if I hand them out. I got $500. I've still got liability insurance over here at $60 a month. I really do think it's going to be more than that. So that was personal. I'm sure as a corporate, it's going to be more. To do, what do I have? I've already answered all this. So I needed website branding, did that. Insurance, did that. Things I need to know, payment terms. So how are they going to pay? Is it typically a net 30? That's usually how it is. You bill a client as soon as they sign an agreement with you saying you're going to do the work. You bill them for half the work, and then you bill them for the second half of the work when it's done. You might do something like it's like a 210 net 30. So if they pay within 10 days, like it's due within 30 days, but if they pay within 10 days in cash, then you'll give them a 2% discount on the total price. That's just an incentive to get a company to pay sooner, right? I didn't know at first if I wanted to do an LLC or an S Corp. That's things that you're going to have to research. You're going to have to know your pricing structure. What are your competitors' pricing? How can you beat them? What's going to differentiate you from a competitor? I need a bank account still, having done that. And then I have all the documents that I need to run through. A lot of this is still similar. But there's just like sales documents you need to know, like a non-disclosure agreement. What's your pre-call plan going to look like when you're talking to somebody? Do you have a master services agreement? Are you going to have a statement of work? Is there a questionnaire for them to fill out about their infrastructure? Do I have a sample report that I can send them? Recommendation letters. Again, I need a pricing spreadsheet, even if it's for myself. Before I start a pen test or a gig, you need like a work breakdown structure that's going to say, hey, this is the amount of hours I'm going to allocate to each job. This is my bill rate. This is how much I should earn on this. Of course, you need an ROE. This is things we're going to talk about next week. But like an ROE to actually be able to engage the client. So that's important. And then I've got all different types of pen test reports and compliance and all these other things. I don't know if I'm going to do or not. Definitely pen testing. I'm not sure on compliance yet. Here's that 210 net 30 on the billing and the invoice. You need to have an invoice as well. So there's a lot that goes into it, and there's stuff I'm probably still missing. But you kind of learn as you go, and you just keep doing your research. Think about how you're going to supplement income, right? Where is the money going to come through when you don't have clients? Because like this is going to take time to build up SEO and get a blog going, get my name out there, get traction with Google advertising or whatever it is. So what am I going to do in the meantime? Is it going to be bug bounty hunting, 1099 work, etc. So Street Corner is a good suggestion too. So things to think about. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, going back. What does my computer setup look like? Do you use multiple computers with different OSs that are connected, or just one? My computer is just one big rig that I run lots of VMs off of, for what it's worth. So mostly I have a laptop that I run VMs off of too, but I hardly ever boot that anymore. It used to be my main work computer, but typically I'm running off of this. The computer is not loud at all. Have you done anything sniffing mobile networks or other RFID signals? The only RFID hacking I've done is with a boss cloner. If you've never seen a boss cloner, it's basically clones an RFID badge, and you can use it as straightforward as I can say. You have a mobile app for it. You get close enough to somebody, you steal their, you clone their badge, and then you're able to go produce one later on and use it. How do you find talent to work along with you in the beginning? Do you have recommended working for a company X amount of years? So in terms of finding talent to work with you, that just comes with, with industry. So I wish that I could have had a partner to come with. It takes some of the risk off your back. It helps. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't have friends who are in the industry that come with you to meetings. Just as like representation, you can pay them to come to meetings. You can pay them to, if you've got a big enough pen test, you can pay them as 1099s or whatever to help you do work. So you can leverage people in other ways, even if you don't have one to leverage for your business. But if you're going to leverage somebody for your business, you should know who they are. Can you get along with them? Can you get along with them in a business setting? And how do you guys counter each other? If you're both the same person, it's not going to work out. But like if somebody's really good at sales and somebody's really good at the technical side, maybe it'll work out. So you need somebody that complements you as well. So in terms of working for X amount of years for a company, I don't think that's important. There's I've said this before, but there's like this pay your dues mentality, and I found a lot of that coming in through, trying to get to pen testing. A lot of people are like, oh, you got to work in networking for this many years or help desk for this many years. And that's just not true. You move up when you're ready. If you're putting in more work than the guy who's been working there for 2 years, that's you. If you did the work and you've learned what the same guy learned, in 2 years that you did in a year, then you did it in a year. Everybody's different. So I don't believe in you have to stay somewhere for X amount of years. You stay until you're no longer the dumbest person in the room. And then when you're the dumbest person in the room, you move on. So somebody asked if I would go for a cloud certification because it's popular. I mean, the AWS certs are paying a ton of money, but the AWS certs are so dry. I mean, if you are interested in the cloud, if that's your thing, then, there's great resources out there. I would always recommend getting a cloud certification because everything's going towards the cloud. I'm fighting that as long as I can fight that. But more power to you because AWS pays a ton of money. So definitely worth thinking about. Recommendations on network versus web pen testing. Terms of pay, job opportunities, etc. Okay, so let's think about this. Theoretically, well, maybe not, but in my experience, you need to have network pen testing to be a decent web pen tester, in my opinion. You still need the fundamentals because the enumeration, everything ties into place. You don't have to be one for long, but I feel like the good web pen testers know how to do network pen testing. You don't have to be an expert by any means, but to have those fundamentals and concepts there is really important. Now, there are jobs and things are shifting towards web app pen testing, strictly web app pen testing. Most of the work that I do lately is all web app pen testing. So with that being said, you got to think about it. If you have a client, let's say we've got a client and they want to do an internal external assessment. Okay, you get one internal external assessment a year. But say that client makes web apps as well. Like they have internal web apps, external web apps. Let's say it's a bank or a hospital. God knows how many different applications they have. You're going to be testing multiple web applications for just one company. So there's more opportunities, in my opinion, on the web app side than there are on the network side of things. There's more money, in my opinion, on the web app side than there is the network side. The nice thing about the web app work right now is that web app work is most of the time, I'd say greater than 90% of the time that I ever see, it's fully remote, like no travel whatsoever. And it's really good money because I feel like it's a lot more complicated than the network pen testing, but that you might find a web app person says the same thing about network pen testing. But it's way more in demand, and I think there's a lot of people focusing on it right now as well. So things to think about. In college, computer science versus IT major networking for career in pen testing. Computer science all the way. Computer science will open so many doors. If you change your mind and don't want to go into pen testing, you can go somewhere else. But IT networking limits you down a very strict path. Do you think USA is the best country to work in IT security in terms of job opportunities and salaries? I don't know what to compare that to. I don't know. I make a good salary, but like I talk to people in England and they say that the salaries in the US are insane. And England has a high cost of living. So, I mean, we have a high cost of living too in some areas, but some areas it's not bad at all. So, I mean, the money's pretty good. It's pretty much, pen testing is pretty much 6 figures all around. Need water. PentesterLab more web app or network focused? I honestly don't. I've never used PentesterLab. So somebody else can answer that. Everybody's saying web app. There you go. All right, calling hard stop in 7 minutes. We're going to stop at 9:50, I think. Is the Web Application Hacker's Handbook still relevant for web pen testing? Yes, it is. The concepts don't change in web app pen testing that drastically over time. Everything that it talks about is, for the most part, still pretty up to date. There's some things in there that you're going to want to brush up on, some newer concepts that have come around, but still definitely worth a starting foundational book. So what kind of gaming router am I running? I'm not running any gaming router, unfortunately. How do I plan on charging for small, mid, large internal pen tests? I have no idea. It's all going to be based on sitting down with companies and determining their size. So based on the amount of work is going to be the charge. So and what they want, right? Like, do they just want a quick assessment, the outlay of the land, or do they want like, to get down in the weeds So if they only want to target a few certain machines, even though they're a large client, that differs than somebody saying, hey, I want to report on all 1,000 of these machines. Tell me what you find. So congrats, Matt, on passing the OSCP. I'll owe you a beer sometime. So I haven't done a lot of the phishing assessments. I know that we use GoFish tied to an AWS server. We used to have somebody running the phishing assessments, but I've read some of our reports, and some of the ones that we've done are really cool. The one that I can think of right off the top of my head is they had this one where they mocked like one of their login pages, and they sent an email that said, hey, something is wrong with your Outlook. You can't retrieve this message. You have to look at the online version or something like that. It looked pretty legitimate. They send the email. They open it up. They go to their Outlook login page. They type in the credentials. The credentials send off to one page, but this page actually redirects and logs in as the user for Outlook. So they have no difference. They think that they logged into Outlook. So really cool little proof of concept to actually redirect. Short lesson on effective social engineering. Guest speaker? Yeah, we could talk about a guest speaker for social engineering. It's a hot topic. If I set up any C2 type infrastructure for assessments, we did one C2 infrastructure. Well, we set it up for Cobalt, but there's one test. Like we have Cobalt available. I just don't ever use it. Any assessments that really stump me outside of the domain admin on a printer? I mean, there's not every pen test is a win. Well, at least on the external side, it's not always a win. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's pen tests that stump you. There's just some where, like, with the scope the way it was, if there's no social engineering and there's everything's patched, or they give you a limited surface, that's frustrating. Some companies just give you a couple IPs for compliance sake, and they say you can't do anything really except scan it and exploit what you find. So in terms of stumping, I don't know. But in terms of frustrating, yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, there's definitely ones out there. You always wonder, right? Like, you always wonder, it's always in the back of your mind, did I miss something? Is there somebody's going to come through and find something next time that wasn't there? You look at other reports that were done by pen testers before you, and you find stuff that they didn't find. And so it's always in the back of your mind. But when the middle fan's lit, looks like a creepy face is on my PC. I don't know what that is. Any Wi-Fi stories? No, my Wi-Fi stories are all boring, man. Just walking a perimeter and trying to crack Wi-Fi. Nothing exciting, unfortunately. You don't get how companies do that when they pay for it, though, because they just want to check a box. That's all it is. They don't truly care about the assessment. It's for compliance sake of one way or another. All right, last question. Does the blue team actively try to shut you down in assessments? Typically no. So if they shut us down, they'll bypass it. They'll like send us an email, or we'll send them an email and say, hey, you blacklisted us. Can you please let us through? Or, you know, like in those instances, but typically they're aware that it's going on. So sometimes you'll get a like a manager's like, I'm not going to tell anybody. I just want to see, you know, if they notice anything in those situations. Yeah, if they catch us, they catch us, but they're still going to let us through so we can finish the pen test. I'll take one more question. Did I ever crash a server? Short story is yes, it was a QA server. We crashed it pretty much every night, and we were doing like overnight pen testing, web app pen testing on a QA environment, and we just ran SQL map running. Well, it was showing that SQL injection was high confidence in Burp Suite, and we were testing it with SQL map. Every time we ran SQL map, we knocked that entire server offline. So. But thankfully, it was a QA. They weren't mad. They would just turn it back on in the morning. But some servers are fragile. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, sorry about the connection in the beginning. I don't know what we're gonna do. I'll have to edit the video, make it look fancy or something. Cut out 30 minutes. And just say that there were technical difficulties. But that is it for me, I think. I'm gonna get out of here 10 minutes early, I think. Put up a 30-minute technical difficulty screen? I should. I mean, I could put a little note down on the bottom with, I always timestamp them now, so I could put a note down on the bottom and just say, please don't watch the first 30 minutes unless you've got nothing else going on in your life. But I'll probably just edit it out. But next week, last week, remember Tuesday, not Wednesday, Tuesday the 28th, same time, 8 o'clock. We'll be back. We'll have our last stream. We'll do something fun. Give me some drinking ideas or something. So, night, everybody. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it.